Here we go. Okay, guys, I would like to welcome to the show. We have got Mike Stevens with us tonight. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Tommy.
I'm excited to have you on, man. And
I'm glad to be here.
I have to say, I always give a shout out when I see a cool beard, and you've got a cool beard, sir. Have to give a shout out for that.
Thanks. And I can say it takes one to know one. So
That's it, man. That's it. The beard respect is strong. So you are founder of the Granite Sky Services. Can you tell
yes.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Granite Sky is basically a support service for anybody who's had any type of extraterrestrial contact, whether just a sighting that's changed their worldview down to abductees. And we offer one-on-one support, group support. We'll deal with families because this doesn't affect just an individual. It kind of shapes the rest of their whole life and affects everybody around them. So we try to help anybody anywhere near associated with this any way we can.
Yeah. Do you keep like a database of the reports you get?
No, I mean upstairs I do, but not on paper anywhere, just in case it ever got out to somewhere it shouldn't. I promise confidentiality, and I stand by that. So I don't try to really track it. It's more, again, for helping the actual person than trying to solve the enigma around it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool, man. It's good that people have got a place where they can feel free to share their experiences and their thoughts and, without being worried about, being on some list somewhere or something like that. So it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's more. It all involves UFOs or this or that, but it's more about helping the person get through the day than, solving what they saw in the sky or proving or disproving.
Yeah.
It's more about the human experience surrounding these other encounters than the actual encounters.
Yeah. How many reports do you guys get?
It depends. It varies. Some months are bigger than others. We have a regular group that meets, and that's usually right around 20 people a month, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, depending on what people have going on. But it's right around 20 people a month. That's a solid return crowd, I guess you'd call, and you always get new faces in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You're based in New Hampshire,
Yes.
which is a cool part of the world, man. I've talked about it on the show before, but that's where I want to live in New England. So anywhere in that area, that's where I want to be. So it's a cool
Yeah,
place, man.
New England's great. I'm pretty biased, obviously, but yeah, no, I mean, the West Coast has Roswell and Area 51 and some of that stuff, but New England has some of the best, or more famous cases. We've got Betty and Barney Hill right here in New Hampshire, the Allagash guys up in Maine. You get into Massachusetts, you get like Tom Reed's case, the Betty and Dreesen stuff. And this whole area is just full of great cases. It's a great place to be a researcher involved in this kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, man. So are most of the people that come to you, are they mainly from that area or is it all around the world?
It's so locally at the meetings and stuff, it is local people just so they can actually get there. But we do deal with people, through the phone or internet and all that stuff now, from across the world and across the country. We are connected and networked with other experiencers who do the same type of work and offer support all through the country. Have a little bit overseas here and there, so that if somebody does have something and I'm not the closest, like I'll still deal with them. But if they need to meet with somebody in person, we've usually got somebody close enough that can make something work. And there's no competition between any of us. Nobody's trying to get rich or anything. It's so we all share with each other, like, hey, can you help this person? They're closer to you, and it's really a good network.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's a great thing what you're doing, man, because it's a little bit like what I do with these podcasts. I like to think it's a safe place that people can share experiences where they're not going to be judged. It's just an open space where we can talk, share our thoughts and opinions and, meet like-minded people. I think that's a really good thing that you're doing, man.
Well, thank you.
So what was the idea behind setting up the foundation? Did you have an experiences yourself?
Yeah, I've had lifelong experiences starting about the age of 3.5, 4. And they've just continued and continued. And, they've been in a bunch of variety shapes and this and that over the years. But growing up, I didn't really have anybody to talk to about this stuff. It was just all inside, all inside. And then I was in about my mid 20s. I was working with a paranormal team, and we were started working with a hypnotist who was going to do um, previous life regressions with us. And then when they got me in the show, they're like, "Oh, no, you're not doing that. You're going back to your first encounter. We want to know." Like, so we did that, and I remembered a little bit more stuff, and I was just really coming to terms with my own stuff. And once I said, "All right, this happened. This is real. I'm not nuts," and decided to talk about it, it was, that was kind of the first step for me as an individual. But after that, it's like, all right, now what about everybody else? So I wanted to give them a voice, if they couldn't use their own, but I wanted to give them a place where they could use their own too. Um, so that's where Granite Sky came from. And it's worked out wonders, not only just for the individuals come and get to share their story and not feel alone anymore, but we've all read the abduction books, and it's kind of cookie cutter, this. And when you get a group of experience together, not only is there a certain synergy in the room because they've all coming from a base level of understanding something that they don't understand. But that's when you start to get all the little weird stuff. Somebody's just like, "Has anybody ever had this happen to you?" And it's not in any of the literature. And sometimes somebody will be like, "Yeah, actually," or the next week somebody will walk in for the first time and say the exact same thing. So over time and things like that, you get to see how big and encompassing this whole phenomena is, not just the cookie cutter stuff they put in the books and the movies and stuff. And that's been the biggest part of even trying to understand it or coming to terms with my own personal stuff, is seeing how large it actually is.
Yeah, yeah, man, for sure. Do you mind sharing where it started for you? What you was experiences as a 3-year-old and beyond?
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. So I was about 3.5, 4. It's hard to tell. Like, nobody keeps track of their age at that. We're at my grandmother's house in Southampton, New Hampshire. I don't want to mix it up with your guys's.
Yeah,
And there's some type of family function because, like, my aunts and uncles were there. There was more than just my grandmother home. And the way her house was set up, you go in through the front door off like 3-season porch, then it was a kitchen, then there was a dining room, kind of open. It wasn't like a separate room, it was just kind of attached. But behind the dining room there was a like 3-season porch that kind of overlooked the backyard. And then after the yard was the woods and stuff, like that's where people go out to smoke or that sort of thing. And I walked by it, like through the dining room, by that 3-season porch. And as soon as I did, there was like an immediate internal calling, like that I had to get outside. Didn't know why, didn't know how. It's like from inside. There was no reason to it. There was just an urge, a need. You have to get outside. I don't remember how I got outside, but the next thing I know, I found myself standing in the driveway. My cousin, who was only like 6 months older than me, was also standing in the driveway. Um, and we weren't raised like that. We were watched like hawks. The chance of one of us getting out of the house is nearly impossible, never mind both of us. So it's an oddity just to start right there.
yeah,
But so anyways, we're both just standing in the drive. We kind of look at each other like, what are we doing here? What's going on? um, and so as we're just kind of standing there looking around, we kind of look over the lawn towards the wood line, and you can see the wood starting to glow red. Like there's a in between all you can see is like the black shadows of the tree trunks, and the whole background behind the tree trunks is glowing red. This red light started going up, rising to the tops of the tree level, and when it broke the tree line, you could see an object. It was kind of your classic silvery double domed UFO shape. It got to the top of the tree line and kind of just floated across the lawn towards us. Like there was no propulsion or jet. It was like a paper airplane. It just kind of drifted towards us. And at the end of the driveway, there was a big tree. So it came over and hung itself like right next to the side of this tree and just kind of parked in the air. It wasn't like connected to the tree or anything. And there's just like a moment of intensity, like when somebody's staring at you. It was like that, but it was more primal. Like, is there a bear? Is there a lot? It was like that type of fear. So as we were sitting there watching it, there was a row of lights around the middle of this thing. But it wasn't like individual bulbs. It was more liquidy, or at least in the way it flowed and changed color. It was a lot of like soft whites, baby blues. And they were strobing with this particular pattern, but it was pleasant, I guess, for lack of a better word. So as we were staring at it, it was staring at us, or at least we felt like it was. It got really intense, and the next thing we know, an interior light came on in this thing, almost like when you open your car door at night, like a soft yellowish orangey glow. And when that happened, you can make out a row of windows above that center bar of lights. We couldn't see any features or anything, but you could see like the shadow of humanoid figures, just heads and shoulders. And when that happened, that light bar around the middle started flashing much more frequently and faster, and it went to like brighter oranges, reds, this and that. And then in my standing memory, I have a blank. That's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember is this craft being at the other end of the driveway by the street side, kind of up above a telephone pole. It sat there for a minute, lifted vertically, slow, not far, maybe 10 feet, and then just kind of shot off and blinked out a sight in a second. And that was my first encounter.
Wow, man. Wow. So you had missing time in that encounter.
Yeah, I always felt more had happened that I didn't remember, because it was in one spot and then it was in the other. So when I was in my mid-20s, we had the regression. That's what we kind of looked into that. The guy wasn't he wasn't a specialist in alien abduction cases or anything like that. So I don't think I was in far enough under to get too many details. There's still a lot of fear involved with it at that point, but it did. Some things came to light. So I don't remember getting into the craft, but I do remember kind of being in it. There was one creature. I couldn't see its head, and I couldn't really see below its waist. It was like olivey brown, kind of not dripping wet, but almost with a sheen to it. And it had like almost like an extra appendage between its wrist and its forearm, well, almost like a chicken wing type arm. And he just looked really cramped. And that was kind of like in the doorway in the object. After that, I can't remember feeling anything under me. So I don't know if I was floating or on a table, but I was definitely like lying down, and I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the presence of them by my heads and shoulders. And I don't know whether it's a memory block that I couldn't see him or how that works, but you can feel the energy that there was something there. And there seemed to be a lot of commotion by my feet. And so the ones up by my head seemed to be more distracting me, trying to get me not to focus my attention that way. But when I did focus my attention that way, that's when I realized they were working on my cousin, and I snapped myself out of the regression. So yeah, I've never gone back for regression after that. That was like enough for me to say, all right, something happened. I'm good with
Yeah.
not knowing all the details. But there's some other things that came out in the regression where, even though I don't remember anything before that, there was a like familiarity so it probably wasn't the first time. It was just the first time I remembered.
Wow, man. Oh, that must have been terrifying to see that and to get that feeling again.
Yeah, it was. And that was kind of like I said, once I got kind of through that and processed that again, freshly, in my mid-20s, that's when it's like, all right, we need to do something about this. I don't know what to do. Not a scientist or a therapist, but
Yeah. Wow, man. Can you remember what it looked like on the craft?
not so much. It was almost a lot of bright light, not blinding, but just so well lit, like very bright, very white, um, almost surgical. It wasn't so like blinding you, like something hit you in the face with a flashlight type of light, but it was just intense, like
Yeah.
light. But I don't remember a lot of like features of the actual craft or beings. And that's kind of how it's been with a lot of my stuff. I kind of tend to remember beginnings and ends and not so much middles. But I think at the end of the day, I'm probably more grateful for that than.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The images that you do get of the beings, are they like anything you've ever seen before?
Yes and no. I mean, they're close in a very basic way, but um, not quite. So, I think a lot of us spend, the time on the internet and go, yeah, no, that's close. That's not, and you got
Yeah.
about 8 pictures. And you're like, if you take this from this from this from
Yeah.
this, it's like, it was kind of like that. It's almost impossible to recreate. But it's very similar. The ones Some of the ones I've seen a variant amount of types of what I'd call grays, from ranging in colors from your typical gray color, and they were about your average 3.5 4 feet tall ones. Ones that looked very similar to them, that were darker brown, but they were closer to like 5 feet. And we ended up moving next to my grandmother's house for a while, the house next to it, because that was on family land. And while I was there, I had ongoing encounters with the same group for a while. And they had the big almond eyes and stuff, but they were more whitish with like a blue, purpley hue to them, and much smoother features, closer to porcelain, where some of the other ones are more pitted and molted.
So this is something that carried on. You carried on getting taken throughout.
Yeah. I mean, the last couple of years have been quiet, knock on wood. I mean, I've seen stuff in the skies, but it's probably about 2 years ago, I was out camping, and I had done all my camp chores, had all my wood and all that, and I was just sitting by the fire. And the next thing I know, I was just out in the middle of the woods. No idea where I was. Didn't have a flashlight, a light, or anything on me, because I don't remember going out into the woods. Um, so there was a little trail you kind of see up ahead of you, and a log like tipped over. And I said, all right, I'm going to walk up to that log, sit down, try to get my bearings, and figure out where I am, what just happened, and just kind of breathe for a second. So as I started making my way up to the log, um, you could see this clearing opening up. And in this clearing, there were pieces of, I don't know what they were, but they looked like black glass, but they were about the size, double the size of a piece of plywood. A piece of plywood here is 4 foot by 8 feet. So it was like double that. And there were 5 of them. They didn't look to be connected or connected to anything else. If they were, I couldn't see it, but they were just kind of hovering up in the sky in this clearing. So I said, well, I don't want to go that way. And so I turned the opposite way. And I knew if I was anywhere near where I started, I should have been on a peninsula. I should have water on 3 sides of me. So I had pretty good odds of hitting the shore. So I figured if I just picked the direction and walked, I could hopefully hit the shore, find a tree, put my back up against it, sleep for the night, and figure out where I was in the morning, or backtrack back to camp. I walked for about 45 minutes, and I finally hit water. And luckily, there was a Mylar balloon that said happy birthday on it that had washed up on shore. And I had seen it earlier in the day scouting around. So I knew where I was enough to get my way back to camp that night. The fire wasn't very big when I left, but the fire was out completely when I got back. So I relit the fire, and I just kind of kept it going. I never went to bed until the sun came up. I just kept the fire going and just sat there. I actually like
Wow.
melted the bottom of my shoes because I was just too scared to do anything.
Yeah. Wow, man. Did your cousin experience
So
more?
grown, yeah. So growing up, we always had the surface conversation of remember the UFO we saw, yeah, and we left it at that. So after I had the hypnosis, I went back to her and I said, "Hey, I just had this. Can you tell me what you remember, and then I'll tell you what I remember?" And she was like, "Yeah." So she started talking, and she's telling me, and I had completely forgot about this until she started saying it. We were at my grandmother's house again. We were probably about 8 or 9 in this, so not 3 or 4. And we were looking not across the street, but across the neighbor's house, like connected on her side of the road still. And in the back, they had a big field, and above the field came in this bright red light. And like once we saw it and it knew we saw it, it started what I call dancing. It was making like figure eights things in the sky. Looked like it was putting on a show for us. And it was like out of all the weird stuff that happens, one of those beautiful encounters. And it's so that always drove me nuts that I had forgotten about it for so long. But once she started telling me, I it's like, no, I do remember that, but that is not what I'm talking about. And then I had to go through the process of basically telling her what I just told you. She's like, I believe you, but I don't remember that. But so yeah, she's had other weird things growing. I continued to have more UFO stuff. She started going down more like what you call a psychic route after that. She'd be in like my grandmother's living room talking to somebody when nobody was there. And then, people would be like, "Who are you talking to?" She'd be like, "Oh, the old lady with the bad back," and give enough details that they figured out it was my great grandmother,
Wow.
things like that. She remembers, she swore up and down, she probably still does to this day, that she saw the Statue of Liberty from above before she was ever on a plane,
Yeah.
things like that. So she had more spiritual, paranormal stuff following her whole life. I've had my share too, but I seem to get the brunt, or I remember more of the brunt of the UFO type stuff.
Yeah. Do you think there's a connection between that spiritual side of thing and the UFO side of things as well? Do you think there's a connection there?
Yeah, I do. I think it's all connected. You can throw in paranormal and the Bigfoot stuff too. I think it's
Yeah.
all connected at some level. Like consciousness, I think, is a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, man, for sure. How often was you getting taken?
Um, it seems to happen in spurts. Like there'll be a group of years where it happens a lot, and then there'll be a group of years where you might see a light in the sky, or but nothing else. But when we wrote the book with Nomar, I think we put 40 something encounters in it, and those were only enough to tell the story. It's not every time something happened or every light in the sky or something. So it's been a lot.
Yeah. Wow, man. I mean, it must be so difficult to experience that so often as well.
Yeah, it is, and it just reinforces the need for the group. Because you're not just an experiencer, an abductee when it's happening, when the object's out there. You're forever changed. Some of the people I deal with, I've had people, you never know what's going to trigger a flashback, or what's going to, he had done his dishes and had a crock pot lid, out on the counter to dry. And he walked by and the light hit it just right. And it gleamed off that little dome in like full panic mode. Grown men, big adults who would knock your teeth out in any other situation, become just, yeah,
Yeah.
it really affects people down to the core. And that's why we do it. That's our slogan, is people not proof. We don't, no matter what happened, maybe it wasn't a UFO, maybe it was spiritual, maybe I don't,
Yeah.
something happened, you're
Yeah.
affected.
100%, man. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That is what I like to promote on this show as well. We're experiencing something, and it's, man. I mean, going back to what you were saying earlier about telling your cousin about the memory that she didn't remember. I've experienced stuff like that as well, because I've had quite a bit of paranormal experiences. But there was a time when I was 14 years old, and me and my brother and some friends were playing football in the street, and we witnessed seeing a UFO in the sky, and it was an incredible thing to see. It looked like a building in the sky. That's how we describe it. It was quite far in the distance, but we could see it, and it was like orangey, silvery color, and it just looked like a long. It looked like a futuristic building that you would see in Dubai. It was that sort of look, and we're watching it for 5 minutes, whatever it was, and then we started playing football again. But it was an amazing thing to see, and at the time, like for whatever reason, the memory was always there, but it was never thought about it, which is quite strange. And then I was doing a show. I was on Paranormal Heart podcast with Cat Ward, and I was talking about UFO experiences that I had, and this memory came back to me, and I just told her it there and then. And then my brother had listened to the show a few days later, and he called me up, and he was like, "Bruv, what was that we saw? Because and how have we never talked about that since?" So it is strange how these amazing things you can experience, but for whatever reason, not that you forget them, but they go to the back of your memory for some reason. It's weird.
Right. Yeah. And we'll have people come in sometimes and they'll be like, I don't know if I should be here. Like I had this happen and then all of a sudden they start here and, you know, it's either enough of a trigger event or once they're opening up and talking about it, they start to realize like, I don't remember this. I never like saved this as a UFO memory, but like I have a weird file that a bunch of weird stuff happens. Like now when I all add it up, it's like, oh, something's been going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When you was being taken, was it the same entities, or were you being taken by different entities?
There's been some different over the years, but for the most part, it seems to be the same ones, or at least of the same group. Um, there was one time, like I can't prove it. I can't prove any of it, but the way I interpret this is how I interpreted the situation. We were living at the place next to my grandmother's at the time, um, and I looked down and I could see the back stairs of the house. I was like 15 feet in the air, and I didn't know what's going on. So as I moved my head to see what was going on, I noticed blood on this white cloth right in front of me. So when I pulled my head back to see what was going on, this cloth was some type of robe, and it was the female being um, who had been visiting. Uh, I can get into that again in a minute. Fairly regularly there. I don't remember how we got into the house, but like other times when they visit, they're always in control. Not necessarily mean or forceful, but almost more regimented, like military style. Like they had an agenda. They were here. They're two males. They were very much like, hey, he's got to learn this stuff type atmosphere. And the female was more motherly, really. She wanted to interact or care if, but anyway, so she carries me. We get into the house and they're frantic. They for the first time they're acting not in control. They're acting like they did something they weren't supposed to. Um, and that was the last time I saw that particular group. But my interpretation was there was another abduction type scenario and that they pulled me out of it.
Interesting. Interesting, man. So you think there was possibly two forces going against each other there?
Yeah, or I don't know what their hierarchy or rules is, amongst each other of how that works. But yeah, it seems somebody was not happy with the other one.
Interesting, man. So was you sort of recognizing these entities because that they were coming so often, and you could sort of tell
Yeah, there
who it
was.
was?
So when they first started visiting, they would come in through the window as balls of light. And then once the balls of light had gotten to the room, they would kind of form into shadows. But within the shadows, you could see like smoke swirling. There was movement within the shadow. And I don't know if that's my memory or if that's something they were projecting to look at as. But yeah, there was a like 9 month period where they were there, if not every day, like 3 or 4 days a week. It was for the most part 2 males, the female, and on a couple occasions a small male or boy child. And it seemed very, like I was saying, the males usually never let me off the bed. They would stand right at the edge of the bed, and they had this attitude of, like, he's got to learn the stuff. He's got to learn his lesson, not like as a threat, but as in a schoolwork or.
Yeah.
And the female would often kind of pace in the background because she didn't want the rigorous. She wanted like the interaction. And on a couple occasions, they brought the small boy, and I don't know if it's like to compare us to see what that one was learning to the way I was learning, and they let me off the bed one night to sit on the floor with him, and I mean, not out loud, but I asked him, like, "What are you?" And I got this image of Rosie the robot from the Jetsons beamed into my head. And we both just, not out loud, but inside, both just started cracking up laughing. I don't know what that means, or it's open to a lot of interpretation. But yeah, so I don't have a lot of physical sighting of them during that time because they were that smoky type thing. But the energy around them, you could personally tell it was the same one, and this one felt male and this one felt female, but you couldn't see anything to determine that.
Yeah. Interesting, man. You hear this a lot with abductees that these entities, wherever they are, project visions of how you will be comfortable to see them, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Was you getting that?
it does. So I dealing with the group and stuff, people have had negative experiences or only see their experiences as negative. And we've had some people who've had only positive experiences, because people forget they need somebody to talk to too. It's not like they could just go to talk about it in the grocery store line.
Yeah.
So you get that good mix of like even it out on that level. But even the people who've only had the good experience, say when they come into contact with them at first, until their body adjusts, like their energy is so high or faster than ours that it's a negative experience to start physically because our bodies just can't handle being in that energy zone until it kind of evens out. So I found that interesting. But yeah, when I was they do whatever they can, I think, to make you calm for the most part. I think that's why a lot of us forget it. If they wanted to hurt us, they'd let us remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for a long time, once you're with them, one's kind of already a done deal. So it's not much you can do, but it is more relaxing. But seeing the light in the sky was more terrifying because you didn't know, is this good ones, bad ones? It was just anxiety inducing until you found out. But yeah, so being with them does seem to have that calming effect. As much as it sounds, it should be the opposite.
Yeah. Wow, man. When you're interacting with them and they're with you, can you move around? Or are you sort of in a like a paralysis state, or can you move? And
it depends. Sometimes you're completely immobilized. Sometimes you have very limited motion. And I don't know if it comes with experience or familiarity with them in the program. They don't necessarily need to hold you by the hand as much. Like you kind of know the drill, so you get a little bit more freeway, I think, on that. There's one time, I don't remember being taken, but I remember being, I think it was on another planet or something, but it could have been on Earth. But do you guys get snow where you are at?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So sometimes, you get the snow and it's crunchy on the top, but it's all powdery underneath.
Yeah.
So it was sand, but it was like that. And they made me dig a hole in it. And as soon as you crunch through that layer, the sand underneath would like fill back in as fast as you could. Then I got a bunch of visions about how we're ruining the planet and that sort of spiel that you hear from a lot of people. And sorry, I don't mean to spiel or blow them off.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Yeah, that's cool, man.
So, anyways, they're returning me, and I have two of them. These are both brown or like 5 foot gray looking. and they're walking me up the driveway. And normally, like if they say something to you, it's in, telepathically, it's not out loud. You hear that, but you don't hear them really communicating with each other. And I heard one of them say to the other, "Don't let them turn around." And of course, when you hear that, the first thing you do is turn around. So I turned around, and when I did that, there was this big black creature, like half peering out from behind a tree. Kind of looked like almost the creature from the Black Lagoon, except had more cat eyes. I remember getting face forward. Next thing I know, I woke up. It was morning. There was no scene out there. I don't know what happened, but
Wow. Wow, man. What do you think that was?
I don't know. And again, it goes back to who's keeping tabs on who. And I think there's we don't, the problem with a lot of this being humans, we think we're at the top looking down at everything. And
Yeah.
our other problem is it's us and them, and it's not of them. There's lots of them. There's lots of reasons and lots of, same as, not every person would do the same thing that somebody else would. We're not all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. So you saw another creature. Could that possibly look? I'm just putting it out there because I love Sasquatch stuff. Could that possibly be like a Bigfoot sort of creature or something like that?
It, I mean, it possibly could have. To me, it didn't have any of the hair or stuff, and because it was part of that, I associated more as maybe an extraterrestrial. But there's no reason it couldn't been. We've got plenty of our reports here. Actually, when we first became a state and they started clear cutting all the forests for timbers and stuff, our version of a Bigfoot here in New Hampshire was called the Wood Devil. They were about like what you get for Bigfoot reports as far as height. They were a little slender, more silver, and they were said like they could turn sideways and you wouldn't see them, almost turn invisible. And we had reports of them still up into the early 2000s. We might still have them. I just haven't seen any recently.
Yeah, interesting, man. So the entities that were coming for you mostly were this brown, the typical grey sort of look, but a browny color.
Yeah, at that time.
Okay, interesting, man. So what came after them?
Um, for them, it was after that. It was a lot of not so much remembering them. It was more beginnings and ends. There was well, oh, all right, yeah, no. So after that, we lived in the same town. We moved. We had kids at the time, a boy and a girl, and they were sharing a room, and they're just getting to be that age where they needed, separate rooms. And the landlord, the same landlord who said, "Oh, I have an opening, another, you know, an extra bedroom right up the road." So like you could see the old house from this house in the fall if there were no leaves on the trees. It was that close. So we just moved, and I guess I didn't send in my change of address form. So I ended up walking in the middle of the night. I don't remember walking. I remember standing at the old house, just standing there waiting. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Like I remember actually pulling a cough drop out of my pocket, and just like I was waiting for a bus, supposed to be there, but had no idea why. Then from the opposite corner of the house, this white ball of light came out. It was about the size of a basketball, and it was, I don't know, a couple inches, 8 inches off the ground. And once I saw it, it started rising in height and moving faster towards me. So I turned to like shoulder it, let it, and I knew I saw the ball of light, but for whatever reason, my brain said it's a big white dog at the last second. And that's why I turned to brace for the impact. And then when no impact came, I finally kind of opened my eyes again and realized I was just surrounded in blue light up in the air above the lawn. I went to scream, no noise came out. And the next thing I know, I woke up screaming in bed.
So you said that they were trying to teach you something, these entities. What
They
what do
seem I don't know if their history, their culture. I don't remember a lot from it. The only thing I do remember, I was shown what looked like an arrowhead or a spear tip. It looked to be made out of like glass or crystal, and they said this is the key. Whether that's a metaphor, a physical key, I have no idea. But that's all I really remember, other than the impression of that's what they were trying to.
Yeah. So other than yourself and your cousin, did anyone else in your family experience these?
Yeah. So my mother and father, about 2 years before I were born, they saw something in the sky, pulled over for it. And there about 40 other cars did as well, because there was something out there. Um, my great uncle was kicked out of Brewster Academy, which was like a private school in the 60s, for claiming he was abducted by aliens. The school said it's either a mental condition or drugs. Either way, we're not equipped to handle it. And that both my kids have had encounters and sightings. Girlfriends in the past, I've gotten with and gone camping and stuff, or even at the house have seen stuff. But it seems to be running through the family. And the family stuff, nobody talked about. Like, we were one of those houses, you could talk about ghosts all day. My grandfather's house was haunted from day one. And, that was fine. We talked about stuff like that. But none of this UFO stuff came out. And still, I came out and started, talking about it. And then I don't know what if I did a podcast or a conference or something, and the news went around the family and that's when everybody's like, oh yeah, did you know this, did you know that, did you know that? And so I grew up with this alone my whole life, yet all through the family where people had something.
Yeah. And that's so often the case, isn't it? As you know yourself, like with these things, family normally it's normally in the bloodline.
Yeah. Yeah, and some people we work with, they can't, even their spouses don't believe them, or their kids don't believe them. They can't even talk about it or feel safe about talking about it at home. So that's why it's, such a big thing for them to be able to have a place, and then, to meet people and be like, will you come tell them, that like this happens to people? I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know in the short time that I've been doing this podcast, really, I've talked to so many people that have experienced this as well. There's so many people out there, and it's great. And as the platform that you're giving people a safe place to come and talk about it as well. So it's great, man. The more people that talk about it, the more people that are going to be willing to come out and share their experiences as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how I kind of look at it. You take a jar and you throw a couple pennies in there. Well, it ain't much at first, but you keep adding pennies, and eventually you got change. And I mean, that's what we're looking for, is change. So, change the stigma. We I don't know how it is over there, but a lot of us over here don't feel our vets, get enough services after they come back and stuff, especially, with PTSD and things like that.
Yeah,
So trying to come at it from an angle as I saw a UFO when I'm traumatized, you're not going to get help. So hopefully, eventually and slowly, we can, work it up to be the norm, where we can start having the conversation, start getting these people the actual help they need. That's what it's about. It's not about proving what you saw in the sky. It's about getting these people help, because there's definite, physical changes.
100%, man. Yeah. You experience these things, it changes your world. Everything that it changes. I mean, with a lot of these cases, it does seem to start as a child. But I mean, I guess it can happen at any stage in your life.
It can, and it's hard to tell. Some people might have a lot of childhood stuff that they just plain don't remember.
Yeah.
Um, because at that age, even into your 20s, everything's either new and you don't know. So it's so easy to just brush off, go, oh, that was weird, and move on to the next thing. Same with your 20s. Like, yeah, that was weird, but I got a party to go to.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
for
so easy
sure.
to just put all this stuff behind you because you don't want to stop and think about it. I've done that with some of my own stuff. Like, some of the excuses I gave myself to be like, oh, they couldn't be that. It had to be this. And then you look back and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why
Yeah.
would that? why would I even pretend that's even possible?
Yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
man.
that's what you find with a lot of these people. They're looking for a reason to be. A lot of them would rather be crazy because we have medicine for crazy. Like we don't have anything for this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that we can't, unfortunately, it's something we can't control, the paranormal. Whatever's going on, we can't control it. It's something that's just going to happen to us.
Right.
It's it's amazing. It's scary stuff. Oh, sorry, my Siri's come up. Let me just get rid of that. Sorry, sir.
Not a problem.
And we're back. Sorry about that, man.
Not a problem.
That normally happens when we start talking about stuff they don't want us talking about. So it's a difficult question, I know, but why do you think they've chosen you, and why do you think they pick certain people to really? What do you think it is?
I think it is because it runs in the bloodline. I mean, that's my easy out for an answer. But why they chose my family, that I have no clue. Maybe, maybe it's finally to get it down to somebody who's doing something like I'm doing to, help the people on this side. Maybe they want it on their side too. Maybe they want the word to get out. I'm not really sure. Um, I don't really feel I wouldn't change it now that I'm kind of where I'm at with it now, but I wouldn't want it either.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. 'Cause I've experienced quite a few paranormal experiences, and as much as I love it because it fascinates me, it does scare me as well at the same time. I mean, it must be so because you've experienced much more on a regular basis high strangeness than me, but it's difficult to deal with, even what I've dealt with, So I can't imagine what
Yeah,
it's like.
and I've done my fair share of paranormal investigating as well. And yeah, sometimes you can get more than spooked, but you know you can always leave the location. Hope it doesn't come back with you. And for the most part, it usually doesn't. But with this, you're never alone. You never have that moment of peace of, oh, they can't get me here. There's nothing you can do, and that builds into the anxiety and your daily habits and this and that, and affects the relationships, and it becomes, yeah, because what do? You can't do anything.
Yeah, yeah. You said your kids are experiencing this as well. Are they having the same experiences that you had?
They've, from what they recall so far, only, well, mostly had sightings. My boy, he was probably 12, maybe 13. They went downtown to the store, him and a group of friends. Somebody ran into the store and said, "There's a UFO outside." And they're like, "Yeah, right." They all walked out, and there was just a huge glowing orange object just like hovering over Main Street, making its way down the street. They ran home to the other kid's house and decided they were spending the night. Nobody was leaving the house. They wouldn't come out for nothing, even if anybody got them. And like, they were all good kids, but you got the group of them together and forget it. They were. And so to see them that riled up and scared was, you knew something had happened. My daughter's had a couple sightings with me, up in the mountains, and another investigator one time, a couple others here and there. But one time we were camping, and she had her little friend with her, and we didn't get service at the campsite, so they wanted to walk up to the parking lot, check their phones and their socials and all that stuff, do the bathroom, wash your faces, and all that girl stuff before they went to bed for the night. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Um, and so the campsite we're at was not remote, but a little remote. You had to walk down a little trail to get to it. It's only like a 500-700 foot trail. It's not long. Um, so they were coming back. They were on the trail, and they heard an owl hoot. And the next thing they know, they were at the other end of the campground. Luckily for her, she's been camping there since she could walk. She's very familiar with the campground. So when she got back, she was just exasperated trying to tell me what happened. She's like, "Look at that! How could I get there from here? Like I did rocks and this and that." And she's like, "You don't understand." And I'm almost tears in my eyes, laughing like I did not win Father of the Year award this night. But because she's trying to tell me I don't understand, it's like, no, I think I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Wow, man.
so we don't know, what happened in between that, from the owl hoot to getting to the other side or anything. But yeah, so she's had some stuff.
So do you think you've got a lot more memories there that you could unlock if you
I
wanted to?
do. Yeah, I think there's more there, and I think I'm a lot more comfortable with it. But I say that very sparingly. I'm comfortable with not knowing just as well too, because there is curiosity and there is I do want to know. I also know, and I urge anybody who's thinking about hypnosis, like really think about it because you don't know what's on the other side of that door, and once you open it, you can't close it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man.
Uh,
You're going to be going down some rabbit holes, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and from there, you don't know what other memories that's going to trigger, or how fast you might get overloaded really quickly. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I always, I think it's a good tool, but you got to be really sure you're ready.
Yeah, for sure. I'm interested in you mentioned about possibly being on another planet. How often did things like that happen?
um, for me, that's the only really time that I remember it. So I remember the beginning of that was I was on that like white crusty. That's all I could see across the whole horizon. That's all I could see. And as I was walked up, um, to my right, there were these like cutouts or bunkers. It almost looked like if you took dumpsters without the covers and just buried them in the sand or snow. That's all you can see with these little square cutouts to my right. That was other than that, there was no landscape. It was just this white sand snow stuff. And then you could see the horizon. And then so they got up, they did the make me dig thing. And then this giant like holographic face of like a gray showed up in like the atmosphere. And that's when they started showing me like volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that. And before they brought me back. But so for me, that's the only time I can really remember anything that didn't look earthly or.
Interesting, man. Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people that have experienced being abducted and getting the messages, and there does seem to be like an environmental message that they're trying to push sometimes. You hear that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of it makes sense. I mean, we shouldn't need somebody else to tell us, hey, you
Yeah,
drink that water, you might not want to,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, a lot of it too, it seems to follow the nuclear activity
Yeah, yeah,
between this, Air Force and submarines and things like that. And I think, if you look at the time we started testing that, we started getting more this modern phase of it. I think they were around way before, 1940 and all that. But that's when as soon as we started playing around with stuff, and who knows what that did out in the, universe past our atmosphere. I
yeah,
think they're definitely here to make sure the kids don't play with matches.
yeah, for sure. They've seen what we're doing, and they're thinking, no, they are not. This is not going to end well.
Yeah.
We better step in. It's wild. Can you remember being on any different types of crafts?
No, for the most part, I don't. I remember like seeing them coming or in the bedroom or, or the backside of that being dropped off or waking up where outside or where I should be or things like that. But not so much in the craft. I think that part my mind has said,
Yeah,
yeah, we're good with.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And were these entities always communicating telepathically with you?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard one like speak or audible.
Yeah. which is interesting because when you listen to people like Elon Musk talk now, and they say that that is possibly how we're going to communicate in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's probably something we could. I believe we all have some, obviously more so than others, but we all have degrees of mediumship, and
Yeah,
that if we worked on, we could increase. And so to me, that's just another stepping stone to, away from that. That we've probably got it in there somewhere.
yeah,
We just don't know how to use it.
yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot more that as people, as all of us, we're capable of doing a lot more. They say we only use 10% of our brains or whatever it is, so there's a lot more room there for for more.
Yeah, well, and there seems to be a correlation between abductees and paranormal events too. And I think part of it is, once you communicate like that, something in your brain opens up, and it makes it a lot easier for you to communicate with other stuff. And it dings on some little light that they all see and say, "Hey, we can talk to this guy," or
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
And that's another reason I think it's all kind of intertwined. And if they're not intertwined, they work on a lot of the same things, and I think they're all aware of each other.
yeah. Different realms, different dimensions.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, they might not all be necessarily in cahoots, but I think they're aware of each other, and they probably understand how the other one works a lot better than we ever will.
Yeah, man. Can I ask you about the paranormal experiences that you've experienced?
Yeah, I've had a variety, but so kind of like the first one, probably like 10 or 11, my grandfather had just passed. So we drove down to his house in New Jersey for the funeral and the wake and all that stuff. So we did that, and me, my brother, my mother, and my father were all sleeping in the living room in his house. And in the middle of the night, about softball size, this orange ball of glowing light came in through the window, kind of went around the room, visited with everybody, kind of went around the room just an extra time, and then went out the chimney and had gone. Everybody remembers it, my mother, my father, me,
Oh, wow.
except my brother. My brother's just like, yeah, I remember hearing the story, but I don't.
Yeah,
So it's interesting when you have four people, but three remember and one person is just like, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Three against one, man.
Yeah.
Interesting. So have you seen
That's
any? Have you seen any other like ghosts or anything like that? Shadow
yeah, I've seen
figures?
a couple full-bodied apparitions.
Wow.
One was on investigation. So me and another investigator saw it and took after it. And once we got into the room, there was nobody else in the room, or nobody that we could see anymore. Um, One time it was our lead investigator's house or apartment buildings, and we're outside, and I just saw somebody. And I was describing them, and the landlord's like, "Oh no, don't say that to them. That's their brother or something who just passed." And I was like, "Oh, all right."
Wow. And you were
So
seeing them full bodied.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But we went to, where was it? Rolling Hills Asylum, or in East Bethany, New York. And that was the first time I saw shadow people. Um, just like black masses just moving free will where there shouldn't have been light to make shadows. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've been touched by something that wasn't there, like pushed, and felt stuff like go through me. Yeah, kind of a gamut of stuff.
Yeah. Can I ask you what that felt like to have something go through you?
um it was kind of interesting. So I was with somebody else. They weren't a medium per se, but they were sensitive, and they were picking up on it. They're like, we're in a hallway, so there was nowhere to go, and they're like, it's coming right towards us. And like right as they said that, you could feel it. And it's kind of like standing out in the wind. You feel it go around you, but you get that same feeling through you as well, um, which is a little not bad, or it's not like horrifying, but it's not something you're obviously used to either.
Yeah, yeah. Man, you've had some cool experiences, man. I mean, some terrifying stuff, but cool, man. So do you feel like with the abductions and the visits from the ends, do you feel like that is something that's going to continue happening?
Yeah, I would assume so. I think I'm one of those people who thinks it's not by accident. It's not, I don't know what the reason is. I think there's a purpose, and I think they're going to keep monitoring, tweaking until you get to your purpose. I don't think it's a, super soldier type purpose or anything
Yeah,
nefarious. I think it is more about, consciousness and spirituality, and, realizing that we're part of everything. We're part of them. They're part of us. And, you know, it's not just me, I'm not special about it, but I think all of us, that's the grand picture. Get enough of us out here and start doing something and changing the worldview until we,
yeah.
as hippie as it sounds,
No, man, not at all, not at all. So how like, if it happens now, is it something that you can? I guess you can't handle it, but is it something that you can deal with, if that makes sense? Are you, or is it still just as
Yeah,
as difficult?
it depends on, the scenario. But I haven't had, so it's been quiet for 2 years, so I don't really want to. So it's been
Yeah,
easy. Still get like lights in the sky that, shouldn't be there, do stuff they shouldn't do. Um, my current girlfriend now is also an abductee, and we've recently moved in together, and we're starting to have, stuff happen together. We've seen lights together, noises in the room. She's felt like hands pushing on her couple nights, had kind of like the shutdown thing where you're not really tired 1 second and the next minute you're like about to pass out, like they're shutting you down. So we're starting to have some of that stuff happen. So we're both kind of curious to see where that's going to go as far as that
yeah,
aspect of it. But
yeah, man.
we're both kind of, we don't necessarily like it or look forward to it, but we're both kind of open to it because we think it's part of something bigger.
Yeah, yeah. Was your is your girlfriend dealing with the same entities that you were dealing with?
Um, some, and then she's got some other types that I haven't necessarily.
Come across yet?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
wow, man. Super interesting stuff, man. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing your experiences.
yeah. Well, it doesn't, do anybody any good if nobody talks about it. We all just hold it in, or
Yeah,
you don't have to, everybody wants a TV show now or this or that. You don't have to be on the, the television to make a difference. Just you can help. You don't know how many people, you could help just by saying what your little thing, no matter how stupid or significant you think it is. Yeah.
not at all, man. As I say on this show, every paranormal experience, to me, is fascinating and amazing. So I want to hear them all. The good ones, the bad ones, the ones that are difficult to deal with. It's very brave of you to talk out, and it's fantastic what you've done, what you're doing with this foundation. I'm sure you're helping thousands of people. So well done to you, sir.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much, brother, for coming on. Let's Get Freaky. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook just under Granite Skies. And our website is granitesky.org. And through both of them, you can find ways to, and links, emails to get a hold of me. And if you need some assistance, we'll see what we can do, set something up or get you in touch with somebody. Or if you're local, get you the meeting information and just help you be it's okay. This stuff happens and we'll get through it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I'll share all your links in the show description. Mike, thank you so much, sir. Thank you to everyone listening. and stay in touch, man. Love to get you back on soon. If anything else happens, let me know, man.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, brother.